Good afternoon. Dear students, this is the bioethical part of the plenary practicals. The bioethics will be given in two parts, two separate parts for you. Some hints has been given during the introduction, during the first lecture, to help you to write the bioethical essay. But today we will see the whole picture in two parts. The study plan shows you the whole series of topics, but you can read the bold, which is the first part of this bioethical topic. Namely, we will see in frame of an introduction why we need ethics and laws generally in a human society. After that, we try to give a definition of the ethics. What is the ethics at all? Further, we will see the five main classes of ethical theories. This is brand new. Some of them have not been mentioned during the years before, so be careful. The old fashioned notes and slides are not valid totally. After that, we will see the two main direction of the approach to the animals. The one is the hierarchy approach, and we will see the religions which have used and even today are using the hierarchy approach between human and animals. And we will see also the animal rights religions. These religions will treat the animals, at least in the theory, at the same level like the humans. And all the other will continue in the second part. Basic notions: animal protection, animal welfare, protection of nature, well-being, pain and suffering. Animal protection: protect animal from pain and suffering. More developed animal welfare (AW) assures the possible optimal well-being. Animal protection should be distinguished from protection of nature. To protect, care and develop nature and landscape in the inhabited and uninhabited areas in order to permanently the biodiversity and beauty permanently. Yes, it's important, but you see that this is not individual. Well-being means that the animal is free from negative perceptions and strong needs. See the 5 freedoms. Pain and suffering is one notion which emphasizes that it is long-lasting, comprehensive, overall and multiple. And the well-being and pain and suffering are opposite to each other. They are so-called complementing notions. So, of course, that the first we have to see as an introduction that part of the human behavior. But why are we protecting animals? Why aren't we protecting plants? Because, and you can read in the famous excellent book of Dawkins in the selfish gene, that we are the result of the survival of genes in the struggle for natural selection. Today we have to add that in the struggle for sexual selection, which is also a very important drive of the selection and the evolution. Ethology of animal ethics means that we have compassion and with suffering, or suffering together with the animals. Like you see this small newborn cloned. This is a cloned newborn macaco. Yes. Uh, why are we feeling compassion and sympathy with these animals the behind the cage, or similarly to these children? We have a so-called care triggering or care provoking stimulus that we have received by seeing the child face patterns or child face scheme. It means that rounded and big eyes, and then everybody knows that this pattern call for care, included the baby tiger. So this is a care triggering stimulus. We have seen the example of the child face pattern. The compassion with animals, therefore, is a psychological side effect. Uh, why? Because in this way, the animal protection protects us from with suffering. This is very, very important. But be careful. The animal protection derived from the compassion is unjustified. We prefer baby seal because they are subject our compassion, they are so cute, or our puppies, the social partner, or the apes because they are relatives. Yes, they are. They receive more emotions than the others. And the compassion is predisposed to delusion, fraud, misrepresentation. Here you can see as if the dolphin would laugh, but it is open eyes, open mouth, but not a laugh in the meaning of the human laugh. Ethology of animal ethics. Yes, animal protection as a claim. What do the animal need for their life and well-being? Okay, you can have two approaches, ethical and biological. If this animal protection has an ethical approach, it is established by humans, and the animal welfare, which is the other side, is mostly biological, is established by the real biological needs of the animals. Of course, we have to try to close the two approaches. The legal elements, we need some foundation. The so-called animal protection laws in the European and developed countries. The goal of these laws is to protect the dignity and welfare, equal well-being of animals. And For the legal foundation, legal element. Two, who has a contact with animals should the needs of the animal take into consideration. For that, they need a lot of knowledge and should care of their well-being. And these are the moral element that should. Okay, but if you see the legal elements and foundations, that what is the universal rule for application, it means that nobody may without reasonable causes give pain, suffering or harm to an animal, to put it in fear, anxiety, or in any other way to hurt, injure its dignity. So this is the heart of all the ethics and animal protection, but how to translate to practical. So these are the moral elements, but in a utilitarian, later about utilitarism we will speak more, we have to translate, so-called translate it to the practical life, made them by that we had made them relative a little bit, relative from the absolute ethical rule. Finally, we have to summarize the differences between animal protection. You have understood the ethical considerations and duty of the human and the animal welfare or well-being, which is the biological and psychological needs of the animals. We need both ethics and laws, and I would add and a deep knowledge of the physiology, biology, and behavior of the animals. Ethics. Uh, what is the ethics? The ethics developed in the ancient Greek because at that time the mythology and religion of the ancient Greek in Athens and other cities uh, was a mythology with the gods and godness who were very similar to the humans with VCs, with problems. They made a lot of failure. They made, for example, stealing, lying. They didn't keep their word, etc., etc. Therefore, the gods of the Olympus were not able to serve as a model for the human's activity, everyday activity. Therefore, they needed a practical philosophy for the everyday life as a guidance. And this is the ethics, the branch of philosophy that investigates and creates theories about the nature of right and wrong, about the duty, obligation, about freedom, virtue, and other issues where sentient beings can be harmed or helped. The question is that what and who is considered as a sentient being? The citizen, how the women, how the slaves and how the animals. Sometimes the ethics as a word is contrast with morality because the moral at the beginning used to be the same. It was the Latin version of the ethic. The word used first by Seneca, the philosopher. Yes, but later on, during thousand years, the word moral received some pejorative tone. For example, a people who speak about drinking water, but he or she itself, herself, and himself is drinking wine or whiskey. So this is mostly they make moral, etc. So, but basically the two words are equivalent. All the ethics are limitations. Limitation which a society imposes upon its members for the reason that the uh, general godness, the general feeling should be good. These are constraints rather than limitations, but ethics don't always bind, sometimes only guide and suggest behavior. The presumption is that if most of the people abide by the ethics, society will be better off. Typically apply to behaviors as in doing behavior A is ethical, doing behavior B is unethical. Is stealing, killing ethical or not? Ethics is a list of principles or rules to determine which behaviors are good, which are acceptable, and which are bad. For example, the ethics of the society might allow the killing of animals or slaves because their preference do not count in the societal calculus. They have no moral standing, but not allow the killing of citizens of the state, except, of course, by the state executions. Please remember to the uh, uh, excellent reading from Plato how was the last words of Socrates, the philosopher who was executed by the state of Athens. Or, for example, the Ten Commandments are 10 rules for ethical behavior accepted by Christians and Jews. Other ethical principles include stuff like do not harm and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The principle that increasing efficiency is good is an ethics, economical ethic. The principle that the market is a good way to allocate resources and distribute goods and services is an ethic, the so-called liberal ethic. Not accepted by everybody, but this is also an ethic. The question is every time good or bad is something. Uh, Animal ethics and animal protection can be uh, introduced by the book of Albert Schweitzer, uh, who wrote a lot of basics about that in his book Respect or Esteem for the Life, in original German, Die Ehrfurcht vor dem Leben. And for this topic, there's animal ethics and animal protections, we have to see that limitation of humans from the other animals is typical. That all humans have the same moral position, independently from the richness or poverty or uh, gender or age, And at the same time, all humans have a higher moral position than the other animals. But you know that it cannot be grounded biologically. Why? Because taxonomically we are apes. Biologically we are apes, and the genome of the chimps uh, differs 0.7 maximum 1% from the genome of the human. This approach, these prerequisites are also anthropocentric, as the human would be the center of the universe. And this is an arbitrary discrimination of the other species, which will later on introduce. This is the notion of the speciesism. Uh, in the other side, consequent meaning of the same creation should have the same right for the animals. And this is the views of Tom Regan defending animal rights titled book. But there is a problem that some animals have more rights. If you read the Animal Farm, this is a citation from there. So some animals have more right, have more equal, are more equal. Yes, the question and the idea arises that more rights for animals of higher cognition. For example, the Great Ape Project, and also in form of a book, Paola Cavalieri and Peter Singer wrote The Great Ape Project. If we mentioned Peter Singer, Peter Singer will be the representative of the anti-speciesism, and he told that consequent meaning of the same creation or evolution, the same measures as for humans for the animals. And in his book, The Animal Liberation Towards an End to Man's Inhumanity to Animals, the Australian scientist wrote these ideas. Here you see the two approaches: animal rights from Tom Regan and Berkeley, California, and Peter Singer, Australia, and later on UK. And here also you can see the illustration of these two basic main approaches to the animals and ethics, namely the animal rights. Human and animal have the same rights. And here you see a lady in a fur. This is not possible according to the animal rights. Or animal welfare, which is mostly acceptable for a future pet, that more or less, but we are not the same. We have to consider the rights of the animals, but we can, to a certain extent, use them. For example, we are right to eat meat, and you see the illustration. Or for these different approaches, you have a series of journals. I show you a German Tierschutz. It means that animal protection journal, animal welfare, animal protection, and for the animal rights, original picture of artist Perez, Dr. Doolittle. This is the original Dr. Doolittle, who cares all types and species and breeds of animals. Uh, you know that later on Eddie Murphy became the Dr. Dolittle, but this is the original. But in a larger scope, we have five classes, or six, but two are in overlapping, concerning the ethics and animal welfare. We have the hierarchy approaches in philosophy, religion, and lawmaking. And these are the Judaism, Christianism, Islam, and utilitarianism. We have the animal rights approaches, the Hinduism, the Neo Hinduism, the Buddhism, Jainism, and the philosopher Tom Regan. We have very interesting special approaches which are uh, practical and more for the animal rights, but a little bit pragmatic. So this is the Kantism and the Neo-Kantism. Albert Schweitzer's use, Peter Singer, and Desmond Morris. And the others, the first is the contractarianism, which stands in overlapping with the hierarchy approaches. We have the contextual approaches and the respect of species and naturalness. What is before the two main line and the third one, we will see the contractarianism. Contractarian morality applies only to individuals who can contract in to the moral community. Narvason, 1983. It means that this is only amongst human. Then animals are not necessarily members of the moral community does not necessarily mean that their treatment is irrelevant from the contractarian perspective. Why? Because if in the human moral community there are views that we have to treat the animals with dignity and care, in this case it can be part, but this is the contractarianism is mostly overlapping with the hierarchy approaches. The animal protection depends upon the people common view and feeling. And what about the contextual approaches? We have no time for details and no goal for that, but we have four lines in the frame of contextual approaches. One is the virtue ethics based on the virtue. Second, ethics of care. Third, relational approach. And four, contextual right approaches. The common is in all these four contextual approaches is that they all accept that the possession of particular capacities, such as the capacity of feeling pain, provides a basis for moral status of animals. Respect for species and naturalness, which is in a overlapping with the protection of nature. This is why I had to introduce the basic notions. So the concern is for this approach. This one concerns the value of animals in terms of their membership of valued species. The other concerns the naturalness or wildness of animals, the biodiversity, related not on the individual animals. They could include non-sentient animals, for example, butterflies. Here you have a typing error, butterfly or earthworm, if they were members of wild and highly valuable species. And now we have to see closer the hierarchy and animal right approaches. First, we will see illustration for the hierarchy approach in the Bible, Old Testament, in the Bible, New Testament, and in the Quran. And in the Genesis, the first book of the Bible, God blessed them and said them, "Be fruitful and increase, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea, the birds of heaven, and every living thing that moves upon the earth." So this is clear. After the great flood and the survivors, Noah and his family, and God practically repeat the same sentences. God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase, and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you shall fall upon all wild animals on earth, on all birds on heaven, on everything that moves upon the ground, and all fish in the sea. They are given into your hands." This absolute domination. But at the same time, you will see that this is a little bit a contractiorism. It means that it is an obligation of the man, beside his domination, to behave as a good parent, as a good mother and good father, and treat the animals and care and protect the animals, and consider the animals, I cannot say that rights, but animals' interest. And you see in the Leviticus, this is the third book of the Bible, the Lord spoke to Moses and said, "When a calf, a lamb, or a kid is born, it must not be taken from its mother for 7 days." My commentary is that you know that all these animals are uh, uh, ruminants, and these ruminants have a placenta which consists of 5 layers. Through these 5 layers, the antibodies cannot go through from the mother blood into the fetus. Consequently, after the birth, these types of animals receive the antibody through the colostrum, the first milk of these animals. And the concentration of colostrum and in antibody will decrease, and this a day is a very good limit. From the 8th day onwards, it will be acceptable when offered as a food offering to the Lord, or to use for other purposes. And also, you shall not slaughter a cow or a sheep at the same time as its young. Why? Because they have animals have a alarm or death signals pheromone, which tell to the other animals that I am in danger, and This is the reason, even today, that we cannot organize the euthanasia at the end of an experiment in the same room where we keep the experimental animals. And also you can see that we see active in the proverb. You can read a very uh, important psychological statement. A righteous man cares for his beast, but a wicked man is cruel at heart. So today we know that if a man is cruel to his dog, many times he is cruel towards his children. Or in the Psalms, we can see that man and animal are in the same word. They make the same universe. O Lord, who savest man and beast, how precious is thy unfailing love. We move to the New Testament, to the second part of the Bible, and you can read in the book of Mark. Then he said to them, go forth to every part of the world and proclaim the good news to the whole creation. According to the commentary of Karl Herbst, the true Jesus, the whole world means the cosmos. The question arises, why is good for the animals if the human receive the good news? Yes, because the man applying this new goods will become a man of higher ethics, and the man of a higher ethics will treat uh, his and her animals on a higher ethical level. So this is a good news for the animals. Or in the book of Matthew, you can see also that we have responsibility to all members of the biodiversity. All are part of the world. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow and reap and store in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Or are not sparrows two a penny? Yet without your Father's leave not one of them can fall to the ground. This continues in the letters of Paul. uh, for the created universe, wait with eager expectation for God's sons to be revealed. Here you can also see that if the man get a higher ethical level, it is good for the whole world. And this is the same. We began with the first book of the Bible. This is the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelations. Then I heard every created thing in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea. You see the same enumeration than in the Genesis. All that is in them, crying, praise and honor, glory and might to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. So every created thing, biodiversity and the universe is, the human is only part of that. As the Islam concerns, in the Quran, in the Surat 6, the Surat about the cow, there is the following section. There is not a moving, living creature on earth, nor a bird that flies with its two wings, but are communities like you. We have neglected nothing in the book, then unto their Lord all shall be gathered. the mentioned book is the Bible, because the Islam, to some extent, but accept the Bible. So the three mentioned religion is or are also called as the uh, people of book. And we move to the examples to the animal right approaches, and first in the religions. The Brahmanism and Hinduism. In the Brahmanism, the creator is the origin of everything is Brahman. Brahma is the creator. Vishnu or Krishna are the main who maintains. Shiva and Kali under different names and forms, but the same are the transformer, the destruction and transformation and development. But you see that in the rank 4, you have a elephant headed god. This is the Ganadesa. So they protected the animals, and they treated them on a same level than the human. And this approach was conserved by the Neo-Hinduism. And here you can see Mahatma Gandhi, 1925, the Satyagraha or non-violence in the politics too. He organized the resistance against the British Empire using this non-violence principle. And in the protection of the cow, in this book, he wrote, "Killing a cow or a man, in my opinion, this is the two faces of the same coin." And the second animal right approach is, you can see on the picture the teaching Buddha in Calcutta, a statue. And the first main commandment is ahimsa, or non-violence to all living creatures. And as a practical application, I show you a monk who is walking with two endangered tiger. They try to save this sub type, this breed, by maintaining some resorts. And the brother of the Buddhism is the Jainism, was originated in India also in the 6th century. The name is derived from Jina Jain conqueror who received victory. His family name was Janatriputra or Vardhamana. He was a little bit older than Buddha, at 10, 20 years more. He, Vardhamana, was honored with the laudatory names the enlightened, Mahavira, the great hero, and Jaina, the conqueror. He and his monks were carrying the principle of self-mortification. They went about naked, unsheltered from the sun, rain, and wind, and lived under rudest vegetarian fare, practicing incredible fast, serious. And he lived 13 years in this way, and after came the enlightenment. The Jain refuses meat food without exceptions as involving the unlawful taking of life. You can imagine, as a Jain, as a extreme vegetarian, vegan, and uh, climate, climate protective person. The Jain does not content himself with filtering his drinking water and with remaining at home during the rainy season when the ground is swarming with lower forms of life like earthworm and insects. But when he goes forth, he wears a veil before his mouth and carries a broom with which he sweeps the ground before him to avoid destruction of insect life. Jainist aesthetic allows himself to be bitten by gnats and mosquitoes rather than risk their destruction by brushing them away. But at the same time, they founded the first animal hospitals, included rats, and this is a prominent feature of the Chinese benevolence. Even today, at least 300,000 Chinese are living in the world. And interestingly enough, what is their profession today? Because they are not allowed to make agriculture because it hurts the earth. They cannot allowed to make animal husbandry. So it's difficult, but they are active in diamond cutting. And here you see the Karni Mata rat temple, which is uh, which is today, uh, which is also active today. You can see here that rats are receiving rats are receiving uh, regularly meat and excuse me, milk. And I would add that this is not the best because their lactase activity is limited, but maybe they are accustomed to that. Now we arrived to the end of the first section of the bioethics. Now please take 15 minutes break or so, even if you are in home office, and we are coming back with the second part of this topic.